So, Chaz Allen, hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank
Welcome,
you for
Chaz.
having me.
Yeah.
Hi, Scott.
Thank you for coming in person.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I
Yeah.
appreciate you inviting me.
What a treat.
Yeah,
What a treat. We
likewise.
we do a lot of remote interviews, which no shade on our remote interviews. They're great, but in person is a different vibe.
It is. It's always great to just connect with people in person.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And we're not the only ones in the room.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you to pick a number between 1 and 3. I told you about my icebreaker question here. So 1, 2, or 3?
3.
3.
2 threes in a row.
That is 2 threes in a row. Do you have a favorite thing that you do for girls? Oh.
Do we have the right deck, honey?
No, it says girl/guys night out, but I guess for you it would be guys night out. Do you have a favorite thing that you do for guys night out?
I don't know. I love movies, so probably dinner and a movie dates. Guys probably go out and grab a drink, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, a place to just connect and talk.
Okay. Well, then probably not drinks then, because it's usually pretty loud, right? No.
Depends on the place you go.
Yeah.
Maybe more of like a lounge.
A lounge.
Yeah.
You have any places in particular you like?
Right up the street is Firefly.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Nice outdoor space.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really cool spot,
Yeah,
actually.
I really
Firefly.
like it.
My kids like it now, which
Do
is
they?
really weird
Oh,
for
yeah,
me
they-
because I used to go.
Yeah.
And my sons are 22 and 24,
Okay.
and they dig that spot
Yeah.
too.
It's a cool spot.
They've probably been there with Chaz.
They might have been there with Chaz.
Maybe so.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for that. I am Laura Cathcart Robbins, and this is the only one in the room, but I'm never the only one in this room because, as usual, my boyfriend, producer, and co-host, Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun, is here as well.
Hi, honey.
Hey, honey. So I told you we're talking to Chaz Allen. He's a Los Angeles transplant. He did not come from here. He was born in Kentucky. He is a writer specializing in true stories and film adaptations. He began writing when he self-published his first book, a memoir, the true story of his lived experience along with the others involved. And it was developed into an award-winning film, American Animals, which we have seen.
Yep, it was cool.
Very cool.
Cool.
And before we get into the actual interview, I want to thank Allison Marino, give her a shout out
Allison.
for connecting us. Allison is the reason that the podcast exists.
Amazing.
Her company, Lipstick and Vinyl, Scott and I had a meeting with her in January of 2019 about the possibility of doing a podcast. We had no idea what it entailed. And she held our hand through it. We launched in April of 2019, and she was actually our network and production house for the first year.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Allison's phenomenal.
she's phenomenal, and she makes a really good vegan chocolate cake.
I mean, probably the best.
It
vegan.
might be the best one.
You need to
yeah.
hit her, you need to hit her up for that. Chaz.
Delicious.
Yes, we're encouraging her to open a vegan bakery,
I
Allison.
know, right?
Yum.
Please. Okay, so like I said, Scotty and I watched the 2018 feature American Animals. I was very pleased to find that it matched almost scene for scene our conversation.
Yeah.
So I was able to say, oh, now they're going to do this to Scott, and now this comes. Don't get too comfortable. This is about to happen.
Yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster ride for sure.
It is. It is. So spoiler alert for our listeners, Chaz went to prison for 7 years. Is that
Yeah,
right?
my sentence was 87 months, so 7 years, 3 months.
7 years, 3 months for his role in what the FBI lists as among the all-time most significant art theft cases, the Transylvania Book Heist. So I want to hear all the details about the
Sure.
heist, but I want to start with a conversation that you and I had during the pre-interview. You talked about growing up in Lexington, Kentucky.
Yeah.
And I have in my notes that you mentioned that the culture there was not welcoming of boys displaying emotions.
Yeah.
Or was it the culture in your family? I don't know. I just had the
Probably
culture.
some of both.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of the culture there, it's kind of in the South, and people are kind of raised to not really talk about emotions, but just kind of sweep it under the rug and say, oh, everything's fine, I'm fine, everything's okay.
Right.
And a lot of times, at least how I grew up, any type of therapy or anything like that, it could be viewed as a weakness.
Sure.
And yeah, that was a lot of my growth journey, was finding out that it's okay to talk about hard things.
And what kind of kid were you? Were you a kid who wanted to display emotions?
No.
No?
I was a kid that I was really active in sports. I was really active in business endeavors very, very early.
Yeah, so tell me about that.
Sure. Yeah, I was kind of like a little overachiever, and I was kind of groomed by my dad to get into business very young, very early. I started my first lawn care company at the age of 12.
So when you say company, does this mean that it was not just you mowing people's lawns around your neighborhood?
It wasn't. Yeah, I had other people that would help, friends, my little brother, and yeah.
And you were their boss.
Essentially.
I
Yeah.
think
great.
You
A
had
kid boss.
employees.
You had employees. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Okay, and then so that's the other thing I want to talk about is you and your dad. So you said that he encouraged you, right?
He
But
did.
there was also another dynamic where you were seeking his approval. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that was a lot of where it was coming from for me, was trying to win his approval and
Slash love.
ultimately love and affection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So wanting love and affection from your dad and being in a culture that didn't encourage boys to display emotion, was that a conflict for you?
It was, yeah. But at the time, I wasn't aware.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like asking a fish, "How's the water?"
Right.
And the fish says,
right.
"What water?"
What water?
That's
yeah.
all they've ever known. Yeah.
Exactly. So then you graduated from your lawn care company into stocks
Yeah, I started day trading stocks
at age?
probably 14,
Oh my God,
something like that. Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. I'd gone to a seminar with my dad. I think it was Wade Cook was the coach at the time. And he kind of taught some strategies. So I paper traded. I just taught myself how to do it with no money first. And that was going pretty well. So then I invested some of my actual earnings from the lawn care company into that. and
So
did
you
well.
paper traded without money just to see how you would do
Yeah.
in the stock market, and you were doing well.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Do you know how much money you made when you weren't making money?
The paper trading, you could start with some fictional amount, like $100,000.
Right.
So I don't even remember how much fictional money I made, but I was doing pretty well,
You're
enough
doing
to
well.
encourage me to actually invest real money.
Yeah. So you had this lawn care company, and instead of spending it on whatever 12 to 14-year-olds buy, you would save that money.
I would, yeah,
And then you invested real money then into the stock market.
I did, yeah.
And then how'd you do?
I did pretty well. I want to say I started with like $2,000, and then within a couple years, I turned the 2,000 into maybe like 6,000 or 7,000.
Okay.
So
All
I
right.
did okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
And then there was real estate.
yeah. So
So
that's
tell me about that.
It's my family's background. They were in real estate, buying and selling properties, appraising, managing properties, which that was a lot of the clientele from my little lawn care business,
Right.
was just taking care of the properties that they already managed. So yeah, at the age of 16, I was always reading business books and like self-help and all that kind of stuff. And there was a book by Robert G. Allen called Creating Wealth. And in that book, it proposed a wealth strategy where you invest in one property and then you use that as collateral for the next property and the next. And the whole business plan is you buy 2 properties a year, rental properties, single family homes. And then over the course of 10 years, you've amassed 20 properties. So you sell the first 10, you pay off the second 10, and then after 10 years, you own 10 rental properties free and clear.
Wow. And so that would be, so that was your retirement goal, right?
Yeah.
What was like 26?
Yeah, at the age of 16, I wanted to retire. I mean, at least business-wise, that I would just be investing and doing things like that.
Right.
By the age of 26, so I pitched that to my dad, and he said, yeah, sure, let's do it.
And
Well, it started off really well. And I learned a tremendous amount from him through the whole process. I'm really grateful for all that I learned. But after 2.5 years, we owned 5 properties.
It's
And
incredible, by the way.
yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun. It was really a really interesting experience at that age. I felt very different than a lot of the other kids. You know, most of my friends were worried about their school homework, and I was trying to find my next property.
Right. Acne, prom dates, like that kind of thing.
Right.
And you're
Yeah.
investing in actual real estate. So you had 5 properties,
We did.
and then what happened?
So my parents went through a divorce, and it was a pretty ugly divorce. And I found myself not only emotionally involved, but also financially. And because it was a divorce that they didn't agree. They were not amicable. There was a lot of fighting. Attorneys were involved. And eventually, my dad got into a position where he felt financially vulnerable. And the properties that I was counting on, because we had set up a little LLC, we owned the properties 50-50. And the deal was, after I graduated college, that he would sign over his ownership to me.
Because he was a co-signer?
He was a co-signer, and essentially at the age of 16, I was a, what's it called? Basically underage. I was a minor.
Yeah, you're a minor, yeah.
So, I had to have him co-sign on it. And then also he had the relationships with the lenders. We bought our first house. It was a little house on the edge of campus, the University of Kentucky campus. And it was, I want to say, because I was doing appraisals at the time too.
Which is also incredible.
And it appraised for about 130. The lending landscape was much different than it is now. Back then, they would lend 90% loan to value. So we made an offer, a lowball offer for $98,000 on this property that I had appraised for $130,000, and the bank gave us $110,000.
Wow.
So cost us nothing to do.
Yeah.
We put some of that money back into the house, a little bit of money in our pockets, and then found a renter.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So because of the complications of the divorce and the finances, your dad was not able to make good on his word to give you what you thought was the deal, right? The deal was that these were going to be your properties.
Yeah.
After college. And so now you're graduating from high school and going to college around this time?
Right around that time. It was a transition.
Yeah.
At 18, one of my best friends passed away. Then right after that, my parents announced the divorce.
Right.
And I was just going through a lot through that transition from high school to college.
Sure. And I do know that you and your dad have reconnected and that you have a relationship now that's different than the one that you had then. But then you talked about feeling betrayed, right? Feeling angry. And I only bring all this up because I think it's important for the next part of your story.
Yeah.
Which is kind of where we come in. It leaves you kind of vulnerable for what happened next, I feel.
Yeah. Well,
right?
To speak to that, I was approaching the situation really as an immature child, and I'm sure looking back, I was really entitled in a lot of ways. I felt betrayed. I felt angry. I felt just kind of duped in a way.
Yeah.
And because in our family, we didn't really talk about things much, I didn't feel like I had a healthy outlet for that. And my dad and I didn't have very many conversations about that either. It was just, this is what's happening.
Right.
You're young. You'll get over it. You've got plenty of opportunities in the future.
Well, and he also probably saw what a fantastic entrepreneur you were. So he probably did. I mean, that was probably in his mind, like, you're just going to go to your next thing.
Yeah.
And he was in a position where he felt like he may not have that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
At that time.
Looking back, yeah.
So, cut to, you're in college is Transylvania?
No, so I didn't go to Transylvania. That's a private liberal arts school.
Okay.
That another friend went there. So
Right.
I was at University of Kentucky.
Okay. Are we giving the others in the heist fake names, or are we going to use their real names?
whatever you prefer. I mean,
Whenever
it's public
it's-
knowledge.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to see what you were comfortable with.
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
Okay. So you and these three of your friends,
Yeah.
are they all your friends?
We don't really stay in touch.
No, I mean,
now,
but then were they all your
then,
friends, or were they
yeah.
friends? Is like, was there one, and then they were friends with another one, and
I was closer to two. Their names are Eric and Warren.
yes,
We went to high school together. It was a private high school called Lexington Catholic, and we each played sports there, so we'd been friends for a while.
okay,
And I think Warren was closest with another guy named Spencer, and Spencer went to a different high school, and he went to Transylvania College.
right, and so he was really pivotal in the book heist. So, Warren, I want to talk about him, but so like, tell me how the plan was presented to you, and why it made sense for you to do it.
Well, at first, it definitely did not.
Okay.
Did not make any sense at all.
So what did they say to you?
So I want to say the first time I heard about it, it was actually at my family's lake house. I was there with Warren and Eric, and Warren had this crazy scheme that I can't remember if he had either already met with or was going to meet with a black market buyer located in Amsterdam,
Right.
who had agreed to pay $12 million for this one collection of books. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, why would you even consider this? It's just ridiculous. It's really stupid. You're going to get yourselves caught. Don't do that.
Right. You were not part of it then. You
I
were
was not
hearing
part of
them discussing. You're like trying to be the voice of caution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still, I think they were interested to share it with me, to see if maybe I would be involved. I think they felt like they needed more people.
Mm-hmm. They did.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounded like they needed a lot more people. But
Yeah, I think so. Or to just not do it.
or to just not do it. Yeah. So they're the three of them are excited about this.
Yeah, so I hadn't spoken to Spencer at the time. It sounded like he was at least lukewarm to the idea.
Right.
And I think the idea originally came from him saying something to Warren,
Mm-hmm.
because he still is a really talented painter,
Yeah.
artist, and he was on scholarship at Transylvania as an artist, and he was given special access to this special collection room,
Right.
which the books were housed, that and a bunch of other things.
Sure.
So I think the idea was spawned when Spencer just brought it up to Warren, like, can you believe that they have these books that are worth $12 million and they're just sitting in this random room?
Right.
And I think Warren was like, well, like, could we get those?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Spencer was like, why? What are you
Right,
talking about? But
right.
Warren just kind of kept spinning it, and it kept growing.
He saw dollar signs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Spencer was like, can you believe that this is housed here? Like,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then Warren saw dollar signs. So your role in the heist eventually was the driver, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you'd agreed, why did you agree?
Well, I agreed probably 9 months after I originally heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other guys were taking it very seriously from the time that they first mentioned it to me, consistently doing a little bit, and they would always try to include me in their conversations.
Yeah.
And I guess just out of curiosity or whatever, I would listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I would comment on it and usually say, no, that's not going to work. That's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Then eventually my life got to a point where things really reached a climax with my family, with my dad. The financial situation was really tough.
Mm-hmm.
I was helping my mom quite a bit because things were tense between them, and they were disagreeing about who's going to actually pay the mortgage, who's going to cover the costs of. I had a younger brother and sister, so at the time they were not able to cooperate on that, and I felt responsible to step in and help as I could.
Right.
And even though I'd done well as a kid, a kid's finances wouldn't last very long.
Right.
Trying to help in a grown world.
Yes.
So,
and then here's potentially $12 million split 4 ways.
yeah, and for me, I got to a point, I had a big argument with my dad, not only over he and my situation, but also what would happen with my brother and sister and like their school tuition and things like that. And it just got really heated and really ugly. And after that night, I literally just walked. I was living in a house that my dad and I owned. It was being rented by some of my friends, and 2 of my friends were Warren and Eric that lived in the same house. So I went back home, and I remember walking downstairs, and I think they were all just sitting around, and I remember just saying, fuck it.
I'm in.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of responsibility that you're talking about for a 19-year-old.
It was,
Yeah.
and I think it was really misguided, thinking that in any kind of way I even needed to involve myself in that. I did what I could, but looking back, I just wish I was able to bring these things up in a more meaningful way.
Sure.
And share what I felt like I was going through.
Right. But you didn't have a place to do that, or you didn't know that you had a place to do that.
I didn't know that I did, and I
Yeah.
didn't feel comfortable doing that. So,
Yeah. Tell us about the trial run.
Okay, so, once I got involved, I started taking it much more seriously. And, the film talks about how some of it was inspired by films and things like that. And at 19 years old, like, what do you actually know about committing a heist?
Right.
So, some of the inspiration was taken from films and different things.
Any films in particular?
Of course, Reservoir Dogs.
Right.
So anything that was written down in case eventually it was found, the idea was that we would use code names.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was the last one involved, they already had their own code names. And they told me, they said, Chaz, your code name is Mr. Pink. And kind of like in Reservoir Dogs, I was like, well, I'm not going to be Mr. Pink. No. And then I actually started thinking about it. And in the film, I remembered that Mr. Pink is actually the only one who survives. So I was like, you know what? I could be Mr. Pink.
Right. Right. So who made the decision to dress as old men, and then how did you guys accomplish that?
So that came, I think it was somewhat inspired by the film Snatch.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in Snatch, there's a heist early on in the film where they dress as Hasidic Jews.
Yes.
You know, with the hair and the clothes. So I think it was kind of spawned from that. And then we were kind of thinking, well, what could we do that would, cover our faces and cover everything? And the idea that was landed on was old men.
Right.
So, Spencer being an artist, he actually put together facial putty masks molded to each of our faces. There was facial hair like woven in.
Wow.
He did makeup on it. There was a bald cap attached to that. And then we got clothes from a thrift store.
Sure.
And completed the outfit.
And so then you arrive at the library. And what?
So we arrived at the library. Nothing was going according to plan. We didn't find the parking space that we were hoping for. It was all the way on the other side of this big horseshoe-shaped parking lot. So we were already kind of concerned about the whole situation. Like, well, should we do it? Should we not do it? And I think a lot of us kind of didn't even want to do it either. But we got out of the car and we walked across this long lawn, and we were doing our best old men impersonations, kind of hobbling across this lawn, and it just lasted forever. It was a
Like the
ridiculous
walk,
thing. Yeah, the walk.
You're walking so slow.
Yeah, it was probably the length of a football field. It was like
Right.
100 yards, and we're just like hobbling over. If anyone sees us, they need to think we're old men.
Right.
And the costumes, from probably about 20, 30 feet away, they were pretty believable.
Mm-hmm.
Anything closer to that, it was like a joke of a Halloween costume.
So were you like looking at each other and realizing that out in the world you guys didn't look like old men?
Yeah, we were hoping it would be passable.
Were people staring at you?
At first, no. But then when we actually went into the library and walked through the library in the special collections room where these books and things were housed, I was actually up on the second floor, up a spiral, like wide spiral staircase,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a glass wall. And for admittance, the librarian would have to punch in a code and let whoever in who had an appointment.
Right.
Yeah, so the idea was 2 people would go in, the other 2 would kind of wait as a lookout, and then go out.
Yes.
And when we got to the bottom of that spiral staircase, we saw on the other side of that glass wall, it wasn't just one librarian, it was like an entire staff meeting. And they were sitting at a table. And that's when we started to argue. And
There on the spot?
they're on the spot. We're like,
Uh-huh.
we're kind of like, oh, abort. Like,
Right.
we got to go.
Yeah.
And then, one guy was like, no, we have to go.
Yeah.
We have to go through with it. So eventually that's when people started getting suspicious and kind of making a pass, like walking by, looking at us strange.
Yeah.
And then we ducked out of there and we went to a little separate room, like a study room, and we had a conversation of should we do this or should we not?
And how were you feeling?
I wanted to get out of there. I was
Yeah.
like, this is not good.
You had your intuition was telling
Yeah.
you that this wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
I thought it was really appropriate that Aunt Lydia from Handmaid's Tale plays the librarian in the movie.
She's brilliant.
She's brilliant. So tell me about the actual heist, the heist itself.
Yeah. So we walked away that day and decided there's no way, it's not a good idea. And I think a lot of us felt relieved, like, whew, maybe we don't actually have to go through with this.
Right.
But there's something about peer pressure and group mentality, and this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier, not feeling like you can actually express yourself because you'll be weak.
Yeah.
I think no one wanted to really say, hey, let's just walk away while we can.
Right. No one was willing to tap.
No one's willing to tap. No one wanted to be weak in front of their friends.
Right.
So, so the appointment that was initially scheduled, one of the guys, unbeknownst to anyone else, he called and set up a new appointment. And he said, we're on. We're on for, I think it was tomorrow or the next day.
Right.
So then I think me and the other guy was like, oh, shit.
Like this is happening.
This is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after that first experience, I didn't even want to go in the library whatsoever. I hesitantly agreed to be the getaway driver.
Mm-hmm.
So the next time we actually go with the intention to commit the heist, everything went smooth. We did not wear the old men costumes.
Right.
We threw that out. We saw that as ridiculous. But the 2 guys that would go in the room, one guy buzzed his head, dyed it blonde, put a baseball cap really low over his head.
Mm-hmm.
He wore a thick scarf and a thick coat where he was all kind of bundled up so you could only see maybe this much. And, of course, we knew where the cameras were and all that kind of stuff. So the day that it actually happened, it just so happened that my aunt was selling a minivan that had already been sold, and it was going to be picked up later that day, and it was going to be taken out of state.
Oh, perfect.
So, yeah, we swapped the license plate with temporary tags, and I went and picked up the van, swapped the plates, drove over and picked up the 2 other guys that would actually be going into the room, And the other guy, we were concerned that too many people would recognize him there at
Right.
Transylvania.
Yeah.
So he agreed to just be a lookout
Right.
that would sit on the opposite side of campus and just kind of watch for police or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So picked the guys up, and it was a weird kind of out-of-body experience driving to the library. We didn't really say much. In a way, looking back, it kind of felt like driving to our own funerals. Parked the car. There was a space open right next to the emergency exit, and the alarm wires had already been cut from the emergency exit, and everything seemed to just be going smooth. But it felt like an out-of-body experience. I felt like I was underwater
Yeah.
the whole time.
Yeah.
And one of the guys went in, and another guy waited in the car. And previously, we had had a big debate about what to do with the librarian, because
Right.
everyone was really uncomfortable with that. One of the guys wanted to use a taser, and we were like, this woman is not young, and that could be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to hurt her or anything like that. So we agreed not to use it. And then turns out the day of, he had gone to go get one. Not a taser, not like a big taser, but it was a stun pin.
Right.
About the size of a marker. And I guess that made him feel more
Like he had
secure.
something.
Had
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were not expecting that. And he was supposed to just go in and talk to the librarian and say, hey, this is what's happening.
Right. We're robbing you.
We're robbing you.
Yeah.
No one wants to hurt you or anyone else, but this is happening.
Yeah.
And we need you to cooperate. So that was the plan. And what actually happened was quite a bit different. So the first guy goes up into the library. He's allowed admission, and he was supposed to call the second guy to come up after the librarian had already cooperated. And it took a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just in there, and he's in there. I'm
Getting
sitting.
antsy.
Yeah, I'm sitting with the other guy in the van, and I'm like, "What's going on?" Then eventually, what felt like maybe 15 minutes, he finally called, and the other guy left, went up into the special collections room, and he was shocked to find that wasn't taken care of. The librarian had no idea this was happening.
Right.
And the librarian let him into the room and started showing him around and just giving him a normal tour. And that's when the first guy, when she turned her back, he touched her on the shoulder with the stun pin,
Mm-hmm.
and she was wearing like a big business jacket, and it had no effect.
Right. Because
it
it was shoulder
has-
pads.
Yeah, it has to touch the skin.
Yeah.
And the woman just kind of looked back, and she was shocked, of course, and the guy tackled her to the ground. And then he was yelling at the second guy, tie her hands. And the second guy he was not expecting that. I
Right.
think he was in total shock, but ultimately that's what happened.
So they tied her up.
They tied her up.
She was resisting, actively resisting.
I don't think so.
No, she was.
I think she was just shocked and
She was shocked.
scared. Yeah.
Okay. And then tell me the books they were after.
So the books, there are a collection of 4 books called Birds of America by John James Audubon.
Mm-hmm.
And there are only maybe like 10 in existence, like a very small number, but these books are actually, they're books of paintings.
Yes.
So they're these massive elephant folios, or what they're called, and they're extremely heavy. So we were not expecting exactly how heavy they were either.
Right. You didn't know
Yeah.
how heavy they were,
We knew they were heavy.
but you didn't know
they
that you
were
would need like
really
a cart to get them out of there.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
had decided to use bed sheets.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, bed sheets and collapsible backpacks that could be pulled out of a pocket. But the idea was to put the books. And one more thing about the books. These books are from, I think, the 1800s, and they were done by John James Audubon, who was traveling around America at the early stages of America. and he was documenting all of the wildlife
Yeah.
that he saw, and especially the birds really took off in popularity. So that's what these paintings were of, and that's what we were after, and that's what the buyer had agreed to pay for.
Right. Allegedly.
Yeah.
Yes.
If there was even
If there was a buyer.
Yeah.
So she's taken care of for the moment. They have the bed sheets. They pile the books in the bed sheets.
Yes. So 3 of those books, and then there was also another collection called The Quadrupeds of America, which is smaller and less valuable, but I think valued $1 or $2 million, something like that.
Not bad.
Yeah. So they piled as much as they could on there. And then one of the cabinets, there was a beautiful ornate cabinet that was built with these steel housing cases, and they would usually be locked. But most of the books were laid out. One was not. So one was still locked.
And it's a collection.
It's a collection.
So you have to have the collection. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so did they break the glass?
No, it wasn't glass. It was steel.
Oh, it was steel. So they couldn't get in
They
there.
couldn't get into
Yeah.
it. They were trying to get the key from the librarian,
Right.
and she either didn't have the key or wouldn't give the
Right.
key.
And the clock is ticking this whole
course,
time. So
yeah.
how long have you been sitting in the car around that? Do you think?
Total probably 20, 25 minutes.
Oh wow! So they were actually pretty fast.
Pretty fast.
So they haul ass out of there with
So
yeah.
because they couldn't get all of those books, they frantically scrambled and grabbed other books that
Yeah.
were around and threw it in the collapsible backpacks. And then from there, they took off. And there was like an access elevator that you had to have a key to leave from the special collections room. So they
Right.
got that from the librarian, went down the elevator, and they went to the floor they were supposed to, the main floor that opens up to the library, and then probably about 10 feet away from that, there's a little hallway that connects to the emergency exit
Where you were waiting.
where I was waiting.
Yes.
Yeah. So they open those doors, and of all people who's walking by, the assistant librarian happens to be walking past, literally in a 10-foot area.
Right.
She walks past and she sees them, and she recognizes these people are not supposed to be here.
In the access
Yes.
elevator.
Yeah.
Yes. With their
So-
bed sheet full of whatever it
Yeah.
was full of. Yeah.
So they frantically hit the button, and from there they go down to the basement, and they're like, shit, what do we do? How are we going to get out of here? Is this woman going to call the police? What's going to happen?
Right.
And they can't get out from the basement, so they have to go back up to the main floor.
Oh, God.
And they do. And they get back to the main floor, and somehow she's not there. Maybe she went and called the police or whatever,
Right.
but they scramble out of there. They're carrying these really heavy books on these bed
So
sheets.
one walking backward, one walking forwards?
I think at this point they're side
both
by side.
Side by side. Okay.
Lugging it out of the elevator.
Yeah.
And then eventually, one walking backward, one walking forward to get onto the exit ramp. And that's when the librarian spots them, the assistant librarian, and comes just barreling after them.
Wow.
So they're trying to shuffle down this.
So she's running
She is
full
running.
out, and they're still shuffling.
They're still shuffling.
Yeah.
And then she gets to the point she's really close to them and starts to lunge for them. And one of the guys, the guy on the bottom, just drops the books
Aye.
and takes off running. So the guy that she almost grabbed also runs. And that's when I see from the van, I had the rear hatch open,
Yeah.
and I saw the frantic way he was coming out. So I ran out, closed the rear hatch, pulled it in reverse, and drove forward. And as I was driving forward, the second guy comes busting out of the exit, and almost like a Bruce Lee ninja kick, flies out of the door. And I'm driving just fast enough, hoping that the guys will be able to catch up to the van.
Yes.
But I see this woman is chasing behind them.
Your heart must have been thumping out of your chest.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I had felt like I was underwater up to that
Yeah.
point, but then everything became hyper real.
Right.
Very fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm driving, and it's nothing but action. No thought, just acting. And from there, while I'm driving, I reach over and open the side door to the van. The first guy jumps in. I look over to find the second guy, thinking he's going to do the same, and he's just running parallel to the van, just blind.
So
just
he's like in shock.
He's in shock. He's
Yeah.
just running to the heart of campus, of all places.
Right.
And the woman is chasing after the van, and we're shouting after him to just get in the van. What are you doing? Get in. So finally he hears us and dives in the van, and we peel out. We go around the horseshoe-shaped parking lot, bust into oncoming traffic, and I'm just weaving through like a madman.
Yeah.
Running red lights, stop signs, driving on the wrong side of the road, just
Jeez.
trying to get out of there as fast as possible.
Get as quickly. So I know we're running close to time, so I want to make sure I get how you got caught.
You're about 15.
I do. Good.
Okay, great.
So then where did you go? Like what happened? Did they get anything?
They did.
They did in
Yeah.
the collapsible backpacks.
Yeah, so we're arguing as we're flying down the road. We're arguing, where are the books? Where are the books? And I'm thinking all of this was just done for nothing. And that's when they open their backpacks, these collapsible bags, and they start looking at the books. And we don't know much about them at the time, but they look pretty incredible. And come to find out, one of the books was On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was special. An illuminated manuscript from the 1400s that had belonged to kings and been passed down and passed down. Medical dictionaries that had belonged to Thomas Jefferson.
Incredible.
Some sketches from Audubon himself. So a lot of really, really interesting, unusual things. And so we're like, well, I guess we did get this.
Right.
But yeah, I took them to a drop-off point, dropped them off, kicked them out. They weren't expecting this, but I knew that if I had told them ahead of time, they may not have gone with it. So they had to hide there, and then I went and swapped the cars because I knew if the cops were called, then the police would be looking for 3 men in a van in possession of these books. So I drove the van across town, swapped the license plate back. I actually had to clean it off because the first guy, he actually vomited outside the window. I think it was all the stress
when he got
and
back
adrenaline
in the car.
when he got back in the car. Yeah, so I had to hose down the van really quick.
Gross.
Yeah. And drop the keys off. And then from there, I was driving a Jeep at the time. I drove the Jeep back and picked them up. And they ran in the car. And from there, we just drove home casually because we knew police would not be looking for a Jeep.
Right. So Warren had set up the rendezvous with the buyer, allegedly.
Allegedly,
And
yes.
so now you knew the buyer wasn't going to be getting everything that they wanted, but there was still something of value to sell.
Yeah.
And so do you get caught because you're trying to sell them?
Somewhat. Yeah.
So tell me how you get caught.
So that's when we reached big disagreements. So yeah, Warren says he contacted the buyer, and the buyer backed out because we didn't get what was expected. And yeah, we had no experience on what a black market buyer would or would not buy.
Right.
So we were hoping that he would buy all these other things that we actually did get, and it was valued, from what we could tell, well over $1 million. We were later charged with about $4 million for those. Yeah, so he contacted us and let us know that what the buyer actually did need would be an appraisal from an auction house. And Warren suggested we go to Christie's auction house in New York because they have private sector sales and it's all done with non-disclosure agreements and all those things. So no one would ever know, he thought.
Right.
And I tried to be a voice of reason and say, all of that goes out the window when it's illegal.
Yeah.
You're breaking the law. None of that
Right.
matters.
Right.
And at the time, my family actually owned and operated an auction house in Lexington. And because I had been experienced in appraisals and all those things, I said, you can't do that. You know, if you get these books appraised, the first thing they're going to do in order to determine the value is see where they were last sold,
Right.
to whom, and for how much.
Yeah.
And they just didn't want to hear it. I don't know. Almost got into fistfights at times. And at that point, I actually washed my hands of the whole situation. And I said, this has gone too far. You guys are going to get yourselves caught. You're going to get me caught.
Yep.
And then they went ahead and booked the meeting with an appraiser at Christie's auction house in New York for several days later. And then I was in a moral dilemma with, do I continue? Do I go to try to kind of mitigate damage at this point, hope they don't do anything stupid that would get us caught?
Right.
So I decided to go. And that was a costly decision.
What happened there?
So they go. There's no question of the validity of these books. The appraiser who meets with two of the guys, Warren and Spencer, went in to meet with them, and they gave fake names and IDs and the pretense that the books were owned by a very wealthy relative and they were representing the books for the sale.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So they're very excited about how it went. They come back to the hotel room and they tell Eric and I, it went great. We found a buyer. Like they're going to help us connect with someone who will buy the books. And I said, okay, great. How are they going to get in touch with you?
Yeah.
Because everything had been done with fake IDs and either public phones or that kind of thing. And they said, well, they're going to call Spencer's phone. And I said, you mean the phone that's in Spencer's pocket right now? And I lost it.
Yeah.
I was shouting and I demanded Spencer to put his phone on speaker so he could hear, because I called and on his voicemail I had said, hey, this is Spence, leave it.
Oh.
I'm like, guys, do you not see this as a problem?
Right.
And they were like, well, I mean, I don't think it will be, the private disclosure thing. And I literally lost it. I actually had a gun with me. And I had been raised around guns and that kind of thing, being from Kentucky. I hunted at a young age. So traveling, I would travel with a pistol.
Yeah.
Which I have a very different opinion about now, but that's how I was raised anyways. And I actually pulled out the gun and I said, I don't care what you guys have to do. Even if you have to go back in there and rob Christie's, you need to go get that number. And they just refused. And my life came crashing down at that point, and I realized, wow, I made a terrible mistake. I railed on them, just letting all my frustration out, and mostly I was frustrated with myself, how I let myself be involved in such a thing.
So how did you get caught?
We got caught later because, of course, about a month and a half later, the FBI came calling. They contacted Christie's. Hey, have you guys seen these books? And Christie's, of course, said, well, as a matter of fact, we have. So
Christie's didn't alert the authorities, though.
They did not.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the FBI contacted them, like, on the off chance that somebody, that's a pretty good chance, actually, because of the rarity of the books and the type of person that might want them.
Yeah.
And they gave up Spencer's phone number?
They did.
And then Spencer gave up you guys? Like, how did they find you?
No, the FBI, in collusion with local law enforcement, had been tracking us. They had bugged our phones.
Oh.
Yeah, they had a little bit of surveillance video from Warren and Spencer,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a warrant to arrest each of them. And in the process, so when we were arrested, how I assumed we would be arrested is, a police officer would knock on the door and say, "Hey, sir, you're under arrest," and I would go willingly. But what happened was not the case. I was in bed with my girlfriend at the time, and it was about 6 in the morning, and she woke me up screaming that someone's in the house. I heard all this commotion and just sounded like an army of footsteps downstairs, and I thought we were being robbed.
Right.
And
You got your pistol?
I got my pistol out of the closet. I heard all this commotion. There had been intruders kind of in that area,
Mm-hmm.
and some really bad things had happened. So I was worried for my girlfriend at the time, and I told her to hide in the closet. No matter what happens, don't come out. And we said our goodbyes. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was a really scary moment, but I took the pistol to the top of the stairs, and then someone was banging on the door, the butt of a shotgun, and eventually they broke through the door. I saw a gloved hand unlock the door, and I considered shooting.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I waited, and then the door opened, and this huge guy was standing at the bottom of the landing, and first I didn't know what to do, but all I could think to say is "freeze," and
You told
that's
the FBI to
when I
freeze?
told the FBI to freeze. Yeah. And then, yeah, he did not freeze. He
No.
actually swung his shotgun towards me, and that's when I saw FBI across his hat and the full riot gear, SWAT gear, and that's when I froze.
Yeah.
And I was so stunned that I couldn't even drop my hands.
Wow.
But thankfully, I didn't accidentally pull the trigger or intentionally, and he didn't pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And they came rushing up the steps, knocked the gun out of my hand, and arrested me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're convicted. You serve 7 years and 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
You're living in Los Angeles now.
I am, yeah.
You are let me tell you what you are. You don't know. You don't know what you are.
Welcome to my world, Chad.
You're a writer. You're a coach. You speak to at-risk youth. Is that correct?
I do, yeah.
And then you help other writers become authors, and you help storytellers share their stories. And you're the co-founder of www.writersincubator.com, which is an online learning platform aiding writers, publishing and education, right? Or publishing education.
Yeah, publishing education, and also helping writers and storytellers land representation with agents, and we also offer scouting services.
It's dope.
Yeah,
That's
thank
really,
you.
I mean, to have come from that, I mean, the bereftness that you must have, that depth of that you must have been in at that moment, because you've been caught, your education is derailed, you're financially screwed, you know that you're going to come out of this a felon.
Yeah.
So what you'll be able to do will be limited by that.
Yeah, and I think one of the lessons that I did learn is that no matter what we've done or what's been done to us in our past, if we just face it head on and accept responsibility and be accountable for our actions, even especially our mistakes, and do our best to atone for that, then our past doesn't have to define us, and we can move forward in our lives in a direction of our own choosing.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I think is really important that I try to help other storytellers with, is to own their story.
Yeah.
To actually embrace it and to be able to move in whatever direction they choose.
I think it was Henry Ford that said our experience is our greatest asset.
Yeah.
You know, that, yes, you don't have to dwell in the past, but to use that to move forward and to help other people who may be feeling bereft or frustrated or disappointed or like they failed or like it's over.
Sure.
And then here's you rising from the ashes of this experience and with all this to offer. Tell me what's next for you.
So what's next for me is I'm excited about several projects that I've co-authored. They're phenomenal stories that I'm excited to share soon. They're in varying stages of development. And then also, I love working with storytellers, and whether that's one-on-one or just shedding a little bit of light on their path to help them go in whatever direction they're trying to go. That's what I really love.
That's great.
Thanks.
Where can people find you?
So they can find me on Instagram. It's just under my name, Chaz Allen. I'm on Facebook.
CHASALLEN.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Facebook the same. Also LinkedIn, and then at our website, Writers Incubator, for any writers, storytellers out there.
That's great. I'm going to send some people your way for sure.
Okay.
I know
Cool.
you will.
You know I am, right? I already have a list in my head.
I was thinking.
Yeah. Chas, thank you. That was riveting. I don't know how much longer that we went than we normally do, but I was a little bit.
It was worth it though.
It's so worth it.
Well,
I wanted to hear all of
Yeah.
it. So I was really happy when he said we have 15 more minutes because I wanted to hear the end of this story. You are a great storyteller.
Oh, thank you.
And I always do a pre-interview because some people have a great story, but they're not great storytellers.
Sure.
Or some people are great storytellers, but their stories,
Yeah.
you're the whole package.
Oh,
And
well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to be here and to chat with you guys. I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. Hi, I'm Chaz Allen, and I'm the only one in the room who committed a book heist.